One.
Yes, ma'am. We're good to go.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Quentin Urshak. I'm the marketing specialist for the Florida High School Athletic Association. I'm the coordinator of the Florida Student Athlete Leadership Seminar. This program was born from the advice and the suggestions from our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, who wanted us to kind of make sure we were doing the most we could for the student athletes of Florida. They want to make sure that kids learn about what FHSAA is and what we do, as well as providing them with the resources to make their teams, their schools, and their communities better. So that's how the leadership seminar came to be. This is our third annual event. Our seminar today is designed for you to watch live sessions in relation to recorded sessions through our learning management program, which you all received an email about. Just a quick couple of Zoom housekeeping things. Everyone's audio should be turned off as a viewer, but if your audio goes on for any reason, please make sure to pause it so we can keep the focus on our keynote speakers. Our keynotes will be interactive, so you will have the opportunity to ask questions. If you've never used Zoom before, you can look at the bottom and you see there is a Q&A. If you would like a question for Mr. Martinez or any of our speakers that are going on today, type in the chat or the Q&A, and we will moderate those questions for you. I want to give special thanks to our staff, our student advisory members that helped us with our presentation: Jackson, Mason, Zach, Namdi, Flynn, Jenny, Sam, and Akila. Students from all over the state really helped step up as student ambassadors to make this program happen. I also want to thank Father Lopez Catholic High School and St. Andrew's School, who were our original host for the program before we had to change due to the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on. And of course, all of our keynote speakers who graciously accepted the challenge to switch from a live presentation in person to this recorded session. So, and a huge thanks to all the student athlete participants. I know a lot of you have come to our programs before and they're all in person and not recorded, but the fact that so many of you signed up to participate no matter what really speaks volumes for your character and willingness to learn about leadership and what you can do to improve your schools and communities. So right now, I just want to introduce FHSAA Executive Director, Mr. George Tommen, who's going to say a few words before we get to our presentation.
Thank you, Quentin, and good morning to everyone. And again, welcome to the third annual Florida High School Athletic Association Student Leadership Seminar. Thank you for joining today, and there are over 300 participants today. I have the privilege of serving right now as the executive director of our great association, but I want to tell you, over the course of my career, I've had the opportunity to serve as a teacher, a coach, an assistant principal, an elementary principal, a district administrator, and also a superintendent of the schools. And now as the executive director of the association, I really enjoy my job. But I need to tell you, my absolute favorite job of all time was being a high school principal. And I had the opportunity of serving in that position for 9 years. I absolutely love the energy and the excitement of high school students and what they bring to the table every day. I would love to be in person with all 300 of you today so I could experience that once again, but that's simply not going to happen in today's day and age. But today, our staff, especially Quentin, has put together a great event for you, some great speakers and great content. And my personal thanks to all of those presenters today, and also for the staff members who have done a great job in putting this event together. I think you'll enjoy the content today from the confines of your own home, I'm sure. But thank you again for joining this leadership seminar. I know you will enjoy the day. Back to you, Quentin.
Thank you, Mr. Tommen. Now I want to introduce Mr. Buck Martinez from the Student ACES program. Buck is the president and co-founder of Student ACES. He focuses on the developing character, honor, and integrity of student athletes. He serves as a life coach and executive coach to individuals in many different roles, from corporate executives to professional athletes. Mr. Martinez is passionate about investing in youth and works countless hours serving in the capacity of teacher, mentor, and coach. He co-founded Student ACES with his daughter, Chrissy, and has trained over 27,000 student athletes throughout South Florida. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Buck, and I look forward to your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Quentin, and thank you to the Florida High School Athletic Association for making this happen. I know we're all going through a interesting time, so the ability to continue to get in front of the student athletes and continue working through this gap and being able to provide, things that's leadership and character. So we're so proud to be able to do this today, and we've got some great guests here today. So we want to make this event very interactive. So for those of you that are on, we would welcome not only your candid comments and questions, but we're going to ask you questions. So hopefully you'll be able to feel comfortable taking some of these questions on. Is that all right? All right, let's get on with the show here. So we're gonna share this screen here. Can anybody see that? Laura, you got that? Everybody? All right, so what we want to focus on today is really the whole concept of leadership and character training. And I think leadership is a word that's used throughout every venue in life, whether it's, your high schools, whether it's collegiate athletics, whether it's being in the business world, the nonprofit world. Leadership is an interesting word. And I think it's fair to say that leadership is about the ability to influence, right? To people to do and follow your passion and your vision. So we're going to focus on that today. We use three words that we feel very passionate about, which is character, honor, and integrity. Doing those things, the right things when no one is looking, doing, I always say doing, standing up for what is right. So let's focus on that right away. Whether you like it or not, each of you guys were created to be great. You guys were all created for greatness. And I don't know if anybody's ever told you that. And we always ask our student athletes if anybody's ever told them that they were born to be great. And, usually there's one or two in the crowd that says it, and it's typically the grandma that says it. So today we're telling each of you that you guys were born to be great. And that to me means that you strive to be the best that you can be. You defend what is right. You stand up for those that can't defend themselves. And we have a society today where, especially the bullying, the social media world, there are many that can't stand up for themselves. So as a student athlete, pride yourselves in being able to be the ones that really stand up, the ones that take a leadership position and truly have that integrity about them. And then obviously to make a difference in this world. I'm passionate about student athletes. I was one of those student athletes. I desperately believe that, as a student athlete, you carry a lot. You carry a lot on your plate because all eyes are on you. You're representing the school, you're representing your family, you're representing your community, and obviously you're representing your team. So you have to stand out not only on the field, but you got to stand out in the community, in the classroom. And you always have to take that extra burden. It'd be easier to stay in bed and sleep some extra minutes. It'd be easy to try to get a job after school and do the things that you want to do. But to be a student athlete means that you got to have tremendous time management. So we're gonna focus on what that means today and what it means to develop these type of characteristics. So Quinn, if it's okay, I'd like to ask some of the student athletes that are on the call, what qualities that they associate with greatness, and hopefully someone will jump in and lead that discussion.
Ava Holmes suggested humility.
Humility, that's a great one. So humility is one that is a powerful word, and it's used rarely in today's society. I think, and I'm going to ask Jeremy to jump in here because he interviews a lot of phenomenal athletes, and we tend to live in a society where it's all about me and braggadociousness. But But humility is that quality that allows you to stay back and basically be able to serve others and be able to be the one that puts the team ahead of themselves. So Jeremy, if you could jump in and talk a little bit about what you've seen as far as humility in this world we live in.
Yeah, and I would also use another word to accompany humility, and that's authenticity. And that's one of the words that I thought of, Buck, in terms of great leaders, is you have to be authentic, because, you know, people want to believe that you're not only saying the right things, but you believe the right things. And in terms of humility, for example, one of the stories that I always heard with Magic Johnson, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, is there was a game where he threw a perfect pass from half court to under the basket. And the player that he threw the pass to dropped the ball. And everybody that was at the game, the media, the 20,000 fans in the seats, you know, his teammates, the other team, they all knew it was a great pass. The receiver of the pass blew the play. And instead of Magic Johnson yelling at that player, he was the one that took accountability and said, I didn't throw a good enough pass. Now, I'm sure Magic Johnson knew in his heart of hearts, like, I couldn't have thrown a better pass. But right there, him as the leader, him as you know, the person that everybody followed on the Lakers, you know, was humble enough and showed enough humility to say, you know what, instead of showing up my teammate in that spot, I'm going to take the blame and I'm going to throw a better pass. And I just think, you know, if you look at some of the great all-time athletes, and Magic Johnson is certainly one of them, and, you know, there are examples like, even I'm sure a lot of student athletes on the call watched the Last Dance documentary that was out a few months ago. And Michael Jordan, who, you know, is thought of as a leader in a lot of ways just because he's the greatest basketball player of all time and because of his competitiveness. But Michael Jordan, who has the utmost confidence in the world, he was talking about, you know, had they not broken up the Chicago Bulls and he had another chance to win a 7th championship, said, would we have won? Maybe not. And that struck me as, well, Michael Jordan, who would have every right to say, anytime I step onto the court, I don't know, you know, I don't care if it's with my current teammates or if it's with, you know, literally 4 players that play pickup basketball, we're going to win because I'm Michael Jordan. He had the humility to say, you know what, I'm not sure if we would have won. You know, I'm sure when Michael steps onto the court, he probably thinks a different tune. But those are a couple of examples of humility that I could think of. And I know we're going back, you know, a couple of decades, but humility and authenticity, I think, are 2 things that I would really associate with greatness, and kind of, I think they complement each other, Buck.
Now that's awesome, Jeremy. Thank you. Quentin, anybody else that have any suggestions from the student athletes?
Yes, Emma Willett suggested standing up for those who need help.
That's awesome. So that goes directly with what we were talking about earlier, right? For defending what is right and defending those that can't stand up for themselves. So thank you for that. What I like to do now is ask any of the student athletes if they can identify, if they can speak to an action that either they did or they witnessed that they would identify with greatness. Anybody jumping in on that one, Quentin?
I'm sorry. From London, Francis, she suggested leadership and Isabella not being afraid of being wrong.
Wow. So that's awesome. So the ability to basically be confident in in basically speaking up when you know that something is not exactly the way it's supposed to be. So one of those issues that we talk a lot about, and I've had the privilege of writing a few books, but one of those that I associate with leadership is always courage. So the ability to stand up and speak to an issue, or stand up for those that can't basically defend themselves, to me takes a lot of courage. So Isabella, I think that's awesome. And then you have, beyond that, is before you speak up, to have the judgment to make sure that you're competent on the issue before you actually speak up, because it's easier to speak up and without knowing what you're speaking about. But those that have the judgment, the wisdom, and then obviously the courage to go forward, those things are great. So we're going to jump right into what a captain, a leader is. And, we use the words captain, other teams use leaders, but I've always thought that, we've spoken to a lot of coaches, we've spoken to a lot of players that were captains, and we've actually written a book called The Captain's Playbook. So basically, a captain is a person of influence and trusted by the coaches and the players to positively affect and influence the character of the team. So think about that for a minute, right? Because to be trusted by the players as well as the coaches is really impressive. Many captains today are chosen by the coaches, and other times captains are chosen by the players. I always thought it was the greatest honor if you were chosen by your teammates, because they can differentiate between being, the popular person, or by being, the best talented person. And if you can combine a talented person with the hardest working person, then you got something really special. But the ability to influence and shape the character of a team, that's pretty powerful. And that's what great captains do. So I got a quote here from the current director athletic director at St. Thomas, because I thought this was pretty cool. And he talks about serving, right? So he's talking about servant leader displays champion characteristics in everything they do. So think about that, everything they do. It's not about being on the field, it's everything they do. So being a captain, being a leader, there's no light switch. It doesn't go on and off. Unfortunately or fortunately, you have that light switch that stays on all the time. So once you are named leader or captain, basically what happens is all eyes are on you. You're representing every aspect of the school, the team, and obviously the community. And then the ability to sacrifice for the betterment of the team, which means going back to Jeremy and our first student athlete that spoke, was humility. The ability to put yourself secondary to the team, I think, is critical. And there are many times when your teammate might need help and might be late at night, and you got to sacrifice studying a little bit extra for that test in the morning or that 5 a.m. workout, but your teammate needs help, and you put yourself secondary to that. And then obviously then holding everybody around them to that standard too, because it's not about, once you assume the helm of leadership on the team, you got to hold everybody else accountable to that same standard. You can't say, I'm going to work to this level as a captain, but I'm not going to hold that standard to anybody else. That it doesn't work that way. So for those of you who have been in leadership positions or in leadership roles, and I've always, taken the opportunity to ask those of you that have been named captain or leader, have any of you ever been told what those roles and responsibilities are? And typically the response is no. We have never been told what the expectations are when we're named in that position. So I've always felt that the great captains are the ones that are able to influence the team and again, go back to shaping that character of the team. And I use the individuals on the cover of this slide here. So the young man without the shirt on, his name is Gerald Hearns. Gerald was a captain at Dwyer High School, but then when he went on to college, he played at Florida A&M for a year, and he transferred. When he transferred to Florida Atlantic University, he was number 13th on the depth chart. Think about that. Most people at number 2 or 3 don't have the ability to influence anything about the character or leadership on a team. But that individual, even though he was 13th on the depth chart and worked himself up to number 3, was a captain on and off the field. So he was looked at by all of the teammates as the leader of the team, even though he was not by any stretch of the imagination the most talented. And you can see one of his mentors here, one of the mentees is Motor Singletary, who was by far the most talented and versatile running back on the team and went on, who's now playing with the Buffalo Bills. But yet they saw Gerald as an individual. So you don't have to be a starter. You don't have to be the best talented player on the team, but it's individuals that have that leadership capability. And the reason for that is because their actions always exude honor. So don't ever think that just because you're not the most talented, you should not be the leader on that team. As a matter of fact, my nephew was number 10th on the Florida State basketball team, and he was a captain. So go figure. All right, so here's when we talk about a captain, these are little things that, I speak to that I believe is critical for a captain. One is a captain, they have to not only have a winning attitude, but they have to foster that winning attitude. That means they have to permeate that attitude throughout the team. And that is done by behaviors, not actions. I mean, how many of you typically see individuals that talk a good game, but they don't follow up with their actions? So they talk about working hard, but they're not the first ones on the field. They talk about working hard, but they miss workouts, those kind of things. So captains have to lead by example. Captains have to have a work ethic. And we use the term second to none. That means if you're the captain, your work ethic, and I don't mean just on the field, your work ethic has to be in the classroom and in everything else you do. You have to lead everywhere you go. And as we mentioned earlier, the success of the team is paramount. And then obviously shaping the character of the team is critical. So we talk a lot about that. And then as a captain, whether you like it or not, your role is not to necessarily be liked, but you have to command respect. And respect is a word that's used a lot in sports. You'll see, especially in Jeremy's world where he interviews people and you hear people talking about, well, they didn't respect me. And my answer to that is nobody has to respect you. You have to command respect. Respect is something that is earned. It's not something that is just given to you. And that is based on your ability to demonstrate those right behaviors consistently. It's not about today I'm going to demonstrate a winning attitude, but not tomorrow. No, it's always. And those are the things that continue to have to be paramount to being a captain. And then the other thing is, we use the words conduit. Some people don't know what that means. So I use the word interface here, but the ability to interface between players and coaches. Coaches have to entrust you to be able to lead the players. Players need to trust you that you're going to represent them to the coaches. And there's a fine line between being, the word they use, a snitch, versus being a player that commands respect. So you have, trust is a word that has to be earned, just like respect. And that ability to earn the trust of the players and the coaches is really a difficult gift. But if, that's why captains usually have the ability to do that. And then, I would argue that as captains or leaders, you guys need to understand that your focus should be on being respected, not liked. You shouldn't care how many people are liking you on social media. And sometimes being a leader is a lonely place because you have to make difficult decisions. So your priority has to be being a leader on and off the field. So, I wanted to turn this over to Laura because I think as an athletic director, and she was in that role for, I think, 20 years, Laura. So she got to see a tremendous amount of, I would call, on and off the field activities. And Laura is a person to me, and we've met with a lot of people in that capacity. I've never seen an athletic director that is more dedicated, more focused, and more willing to work with each and every student athlete. So she's, in my heart, she's a hero in my heart. But Laura, can you talk a little bit about, as an athletic director, what roles did you expect the captain to play? Because you had over 20 sports at the university, so that was always very challenging.
All right. Well, thank you for asking me to be here this morning. Already I could tell when 300 participants signed up, but 52 are actually here up at 8 in the morning. We're already displaying some students that have the captain qualities. So that's something that I looked at right away and monitored, because those are the kids that I would have on my leadership team, so to speak. But for me as an athletic director, one of the key components for a captain is you are actually the coach in the locker room. You're taking care of business in the locker room so the coach doesn't have to take care of it. And then I ultimately don't have to take care of it. So things like Buck had mentioned, the bullying or, the silliness that happens in there, that's a good place to decompress, but it's also a place where that's your home, that's your house, and that's where a lot of the team bonding occurs. And that's a lot of your habits. So if you're in the locker room and you're an extension of the coach, then you're helping follow all the team rules on the field and the court. And I also think that a captain, and it's not always the best player, but when it is the best player, wow, then you've really got something special. But usually the captain bleeds the vision of the coach, of the university, of the athletic department, of the high school. They're the ones that in their actions every day on and off the field, on the court, in the classroom, they're bleeding that vision. And sometimes that's a little scary for young people to think that that's an expectation, but it's usually something that's pretty easy for them to do. It's just my job and the coach's job to kind of help, get some of those things out. And obviously being on this call today with Buck, it's definitely a great asset for students to pay attention.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura, you got a chance to see so many young people come into the universities as freshmen, and then you see them evolve into that role of leader. Can you talk a little bit about one or two experiences where you witnessed an individual come into the school kind of being shy and playing a role, and what allowed them to excel themselves to be captains of a team?
Well, I'm not sure that this person is shy when I say Donnell Bennett.
There you go.
But we had our first football season. And so last year, our first football season, obviously there are going to be a tremendous amount of freshmen and sophomores starting right away, because it's a new sport to our university. And Donnell went through this program, so I'm sure he was groomed quite nicely, and he comes from a great family as well. But a freshman, well, so to speak, from playing, there was a play and I was on the sidelines, and one of the players came off the field and they were using some words that I wouldn't use openly for people to hear. And I happened to be standing there, and I didn't have to do a thing, and the coaches didn't have to do a thing. Donnell walked over to the player calmly with the best leadership skills I've ever seen, and talked it over with the player, and they worked it out. And then we went on and had a great game. So that to me that's when we were on the right track. That's when I know our coaches and our university is on the right track, is when you can have a player that's a freshman playing, be able to take care of that.
That's awesome. And so as an AD, what do you expect a captain to do on campus that is above and beyond what they do on the team, and the same for the community?
Right. So on campus in general, your captain, everybody knows you're the captain because you're wearing the armband when you walk out onto the field, or you're being named the captain, you're in the program as a captain. So obviously everybody knows who you are, and you have to be able to take that and appreciate that and not be scared. It's a tough job for sure. Not everybody's going to like you, but they're going to love you when they see your actions. So like you said before, it's doing the right things when nobody's looking. And when they are looking, you're not correcting yourself because you're already doing the right things. It's showing up to class on time. It's being an active listener in the classroom, and it's also when you have your teammates or even other kids on other teams, if they're talking or doing anything, you quietly could say, hey, we got to pay attention. It's telling others to show up on time and be active listeners. It's taking care of business. I mean, it's who you are. You shouldn't have to try to be a good person. You should just be a good person. And when you take care of those things, people will follow. And in the community, obviously, because you are a captain, someone like me is going to call on you to participate more, and you're going to actively be engaged in that process, because people are going to know that you are the captain. I have never had a problem with someone like Donnell Bennett representing our university in the community, because he does it naturally. It's who he is, and he has a great ability to get people to follow him. And I think those are the qualities that I look at. And again, it's scary when you're thinking of being 15 to 18 years old in high school of, oh, you know, those are big things, but it becomes who you are, and it's natural. And that's what it should be, just natural.
That's awesome. Jeremy, did you want to add, as far as, you know, in your role, what you have noticed as far as captains, and because you get to see who's wearing the C on the field a lot, and then you get to interview a lot of these young men and women after games, and what is it about a captain that you've noticed?
Yeah, so Buck, the name that comes to mind, he's one of my favorite players that I've gotten to know and interview, and he's a little bit older now, but Udonis Haslem of the Miami Heat. So Udonis has been the captain of the Heat, or co-captain, for over a decade. And just a quick synopsis of his story. So he went to the University of Florida. He was on the 2000 team that went to the Final Four. Never was the most talented player, went undrafted in the NBA, played overseas in Europe for a year or so, did every single thing, Buck, that you outlined. You know, work ethic was off the charts, you know, first to be in the gym, last to leave. Needed to do all those things to prove that he could play in the NBA, because 30 teams, when he was up to be drafted, didn't think that he could play in the NBA. So in 2003, the Miami Heat take a chance on him. They sign him. He's been with the Heat for 17 years. I believe he's the longest. I believe that he has been with his current team longer than anybody else has currently in the NBA. And he has been the captain for over a decade. He has never been the best player on his team. He has never been the second best player on his team. Some of the guys that have been on the team when he's been captain, names like Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Jimmy Butler. Not to say that any of those names don't have leadership qualities and captain qualities, because they do. But it's the ultimate example of the guy that doesn't have the most talent, isn't the best player on the team, has had various roles, from being a starting power forward on a championship team to agreeing to become a reserve voluntarily because there was another player at his position that was better, to now the last couple of years basically not playing at all. But it's the ultimate example of he's always still had incredible work ethic. You know, he's had countless examples of, you know, the story that Laura told about Donnell Bennett. You know, he's done that probably a million times as a player, so that, you know, Eric Spoelstra or Pat Riley or any of the other assistant coaches haven't had to do that. He wears the Heat culture on his sleeve. He represents that team. He represents that organization. He represents that brand. And off the court, you know, he is a franchise owner of several different Subways and other establishments. He's a leader in the community. So in terms of a captain, he's looked at as kind of like the LeBron James of leaders, even though he's never been, you know, a LeBron James when it comes to skills in the basketball court. And, you know, I just can't think of a better person and better figure for a lot of student athletes that are on the call now, you know, regardless of what sport that you play, to kind of fashion yourselves after.
That's awesome. I go back to really dating myself, because you mentioned Magic, but there was a guy on the Lakers that his name was AC Green. And AC was a kid that just did whatever he had to do, but he always conducted himself with incredible, you know, what I would call integrity. So he had to deal with all those characters, but he always stood out as the guy who would always do what was right for the franchise. So let's jump into what are those traits and qualities that a captain needs to basically exemplify, right? So this young lady, Maria Vega, was a recipient of the NAIA Champion of Character Award. So the NAIA has a term, champion of character, that we use a lot. And I asked her specifically what it meant to her to be a captain. Obviously, you can read. This is what she says. But she always talks about setting the example. But then again, being a captain means that then you have to hold everybody else accountable to that standard. So, and then she talks about, I use the term the light switch, but she uses, leaders don't have days off. Your team relies on you to be their guide, their beacon. And then you always have to be putting yourself secondary to your team. So I thought that was pretty cool for someone, who's only a couple years probably older than most of you guys on this call, to truly understand what it means to be a leader. So be thinking of what are those traits and qualities that you guys need to exemplify to have that. So here you go. I am witnessing, and I was one of those fortunate ones that was a captain, and I got to see a lot of what I would say good behaviors. I saw a lot of behaviors that were not necessarily something that I would feel proud of, both between the players as well as coaches. And being a captain means that you get to not necessarily you don't ever have to compromise your standards because a coach might not be living up to the standards that you set for yourself. So as a captain, you always have to be true to yourself. So you got to command respect. And then we talked about the trust word. So there's actually a book written by a very successful business author. His name's Steve Covey. And it's 365 pages of nothing but the subject of trust. And everything you do in life, guys, it's whether waking up in the morning, ordering food at a restaurant, you have to trust that. For example, you order food at a restaurant, you got to trust that it's cooked right, that they're going to give you what you expected, that they're going to charge you what they said they were going to charge you. All these things have to happen. So then imagine relationships between you and the players, you and the coaches, you and your athletic directors, everything that goes on in a typical day of a student athlete. And it's amazing how many things are going on in your world. And ultimately what happens is that every time you speak, that word becomes your bond. People are going to measure you. So whatever you say, they're going to hold you accountable to that. So if you tell somebody you're going to do X, Y, Z, then you better do it, which goes back to the issue of integrity, right? And we've talked about judgment. And then the word that we haven't used yet, but it's critical to everything we say and do, is a captain and every student athlete, candidly, you have to be responsible and dependable. Because if you can't be responsible and dependable, you can't even function in the basic aspects of life, right? So beyond schoolwork, beyond, what you're doing as a student athlete, but then into, whatever job that you eventually work towards, if you can't get there on time, if you can't do the things they entrust you to do, you will not keep your job. So that's why you have to be able to set the standard of what it means to be responsible and dependable. And that means, whether it's on the field, making sure your grades are to the best that they can be, making sure that if you got responsibilities to clean up locker rooms, weight rooms, whatever, that's your job. And then I'm a big fan of, some people think it's fictional, some people don't, but there's a Chinese general called Sun Tzu, and Sun Tzu is used a lot by every business school. But it talks about, which I thought was so powerful for this conversation, it talks about a good commander is benevolent and unconcerned with fame. So as a captain, as a leader, the last thing you need to be worried about is your personal, headlines and your attributes. So you don't care about, Sally Smith went 4 for 4. What you should be caring about is that your team played phenomenal. Your team did the best they could, and you were a leader on that team. So, you got to be able to put your personal stats, not that you don't care about your personal stats, because obviously they're important, but that they become secondary to the success of the team. And then we've talked a lot about commanding respect. So I use the words commanding versus demanding, because we can all demand respect, but until you begin to win the hearts and minds of those that follow you, you will not be commanding respect. So that comes with, we talked about courageous, So it's courageous actions. So consistent behavior, I believe loyalty, when people realize that, that they can entrust you and that you're loyal to their issues, you'll begin to win that respect. And then obviously you got to be willing to sacrifice for yourself as well as others. And then too many people today are too concerned about making sure they have the last word. I think respect is earned when you listen. When you genuinely listen to the needs of your fellow, athletes and student athletes, right? Because if they have issues and they have needs and they have concerns, you need to listen to them, make sure that you can truly represent that to the coaches. And then obviously, do you genuinely care about your teammates? So, as a leader, you're going to be dealt with a lot of adversity, but you got to be able to stay consistent through that adversity. So, what I would say, Quentin, is if I could ask those student athletes that were so gracious to be on the call this morning, if we could ask them a couple things, is if as a teammate, what traits and qualities would you look for in a captain? And then the three questions behind it is, why would it matter? How does that impact your team? And how would it impact you as a leader? And thank you in advance for those that are going to answer. Anybody volunteering?
Yes, we have a couple. London suggested persistence. Isabella, positive attitude, inspire the team. Another Isabella, fairness, not being too competitive, encouragement. Emma suggested trustworthy, knowing that they are telling you what the coach asked and not making up stories.
Wow, those are powerful. So I'm not sure which Isabella went on twice already, but thank you for that. I mean, you would be my leader right off the bat. Emma, I think you've jumped in on two. That's awesome in London. So all those things are consistent what we talked about, right? Because obviously positive attitude, winning attitude, those are things that are critical. We say in our student ACES program, we talk a lot about that the only thing that you can truly control in life is your attitude. Because life happens, adversity happens, but how you react to that is what makes you the person that you are. So the great Lou Holtz, who was a great coach, South Carolina, coached at Notre Dame. I think he coached in the pros a little bit with the Jets. But Lou Holtz used to always say that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. Because we really don't know what life has in store for us. Every day's, an experience. We could not have imagined a few months ago that we would all be going through this pandemic. And then those that are the true leaders in life respond to it, make the most out of it. Those of you that are up today making this, investing in your leadership skills, I mean, those are the people that obviously are going to be so successful in everything you do, because you're taking the opportunity to continue to learn, continue to be better at what you do. So we're very proud of you. I would ask another question, if I may, Quentin, is that when you are in a position as a student athlete and you're on a team setting, you can have or be affected by both the negativity of a captain as well as the positivity of a captain. And have any of the participants been involved in a situation where the greatness of a captain truly, changed their life or their aspect of something, and vice versa? Was there something that negative that a captain did that became, almost like a cancerous scenario for a team?
Ava said that yes, she's been in that position before. And Isabella said excluding the younger players has had a negative impact.
Wow, that's powerful. So yeah, as a captain, I mean, we use an example where you have footprints on the sand, and we talk about the greatest thing you can do as a captain is leave a legacy behind for those that are coming behind you. So, captains have to take the role of being able to be the encouragers, being the ones that sometimes put the younger individuals, the freshmen, the sophomores on their back. And you got to lead. You got to lead them always, because ultimately what's important is you, the person, what you did, what your legacy was all about. It wasn't necessarily the wins and the losses, but how you were able to make and shape other young men and women. So that's pretty powerful, guys. So Laura, anything you want to add to that? I mean, you've seen traits and qualities. I mean, you've seen a lot in our captains.
Right. And I see Emma Willis, she had mentioned my team last year split up due to issues with the trust between the coaches and the players. And of course, as an athletic director, that strikes me, because that would be my worst case scenario that would ever happen. So with that, I would say we've done, I know at St. Thomas, and you've highlighted many of the athletes in your presentation, and Maria Vega will always stand out in my 20 plus years as an AD at St. Thomas, because she really is the leader on and off the field, in the community, in the classroom. And one of the things that she did this year that really impressed me is a couple of her teammates created a social media poll because they didn't like something like a new vision or a new idea that the university had. And Maria called in those students, and she took it upon herself to take care of it, and then meet with the provost, and then call me later and tell me how she handled it. And that is like a huge, that basically should have been my job, but because I did my job so well, and she was, who she is, she basically took care of things. And that's just an example, that I would say to Emma is like, that's unfortunate that your team split up due to issues in trust between the coaches and the players, because communication is everything. And there's probably a better way to have handled that, but unfortunately it is what it is. But you're going to learn from that, and you're going to see later in your life, there will be always conflict. And then how are you going to handle that resolution? And I think, having someone like Maria around is a great avenue to find out how to best handle conflict resolution.
And that's a great point, Laura, because I was in the business world for 35 years. I got to hire a lot of people, see a lot of things. And, when Laura said she did her job well, I remember the chairman of General Electric, GE, Jack Welch, always used to say that his job was nothing more than identifying the right talent to be the great leaders. So each of you every day are auditioning for a job. And that job is, whether you're a student athlete, you're auditioning to be a leader on the team, off the field, on the field. Colleges are looking at you every day, whether it's to be, someone they're going to offer an opportunity to go to their school. Others are looking at internships. So, the ability to stand out when that phone call goes to the athletic director or the coaches, and they say, hey, I'm looking for interns for the summer. Do you guys have anybody around? They're always going to go towards those individuals that have led by example on the team. So, be thinking about what it is that you want to be, and what are those traits and qualities that are going to shape you to be the person that you are and want to be.
Hey, Buck, we've got a question from Isabella, actually, before you move on, that is relevant to the topic. Isabella asked, how do you command respect, but also be there as a friend?
Yeah, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I mean, I think, let's think about that for a minute. So commanding respect, everything we've talked about is how you conduct yourselves, your actions, right? So the ability to make the tough decisions, the ability to be competent, the ability to be the one that has the tremendous work ethic, the judgment, all those things. And sometimes, that comes from years of observing those right behaviors, whether it's your family, your parents, your coaches, your teachers, whoever it may be. But that doesn't mean that you have to compromise those standards to be a friend. A friend, hopefully, is someone that respects you and trusts you for the person you are, not because you're going to be willing to compromise your values to allow them to have poor standards. So if your friend wants to do something that is irresponsible and not up to your standards, unfortunately, a friend sometimes is the one that has to make that tough decision and say, I don't agree with what you're doing. I believe it's dangerous. It's going to hurt you in life. And they might not like you at the time, and it might cost you a so-called friendship if they truly are a friend. But ultimately, they will eventually come to that. Let me give you an example of that. I was a catcher. There's no greater level of trust than a pitcher and a catcher, right? You got to have an incredible amount of camaraderie, trust, all that kind of stuff. I found out before a big game, some of the guys came to me and told me that our pitcher was drinking irresponsibly before a game, doing some, what I would call crazy stuff. So I had a conversation. I didn't go to the coaches. I went directly to him, and he totally blew me off. He basically said, mind your own business, yada, yada, yada. And then I was discouraged because I felt that, I thought he was going to listen to me, and he didn't. And then about 3 years later, here's a guy that was a first-round draft pick. No doubt he had the ability to play at any level. And then he wrapped his car around a pole on I-95. And, sometimes it just because, I considered him a friend, but I wasn't going to say that your behavior was okay. So I quickly had to realize that it was going to cost us a friendship if he truly was that shallow of a person. But ultimately, his actions almost cost him his life. But it did cost him a professional baseball career. So, it's I don't think they're mutually exclusive, guys. Being a friend, ultimately, if the person is a true friend, the ability to respect you is going to be more important for many, many years than the ability to be liked. And that's the things we've continued to talk about. So hopefully that helps, Isabella. That's a great question. And then we're going to talk about the image of a captain real quick, because when you wear the C, that means a lot. All eyes on you. So Laura had mentioned Donnell Bennett. He's an incredible young man. This was, his perspective of the image of a captain. I think many of you have, seen watch people on the field that have the C. Hopefully you begin to read a little bit about how they conduct themselves, why they lead the way they do. But ultimately, it's about that whole issue of honor. And again, go back to Isabella, the respect. What is it, respect? And captains, I think if you go to the second one, you got to be under control, guys. I mean, you all play very competitive sports. So think about basketball, ladies on the court, gentlemen, football field, baseball, softball, all the things that you work through where you have situations that it's easy to lose control. The emotion of the game gets to you, the physicality of the game, but captains are the ones that have to be willing to step up, step in the middle, to keep control, because your teammates are watching you and how you conduct yourself in those situations. Not just you personally, but how you control the other ones on the team. And then be able to take that off the field into other settings. And ultimately, the image of a captain is the one that's willing to work the hardest. I mean, there's no substitute for hard work. I mean, whether it's on watching film, in the classroom, it's got to be translatable to everything you do. And then, that quote on the bottom is something that I thought was powerful. You got to be able to translate your vision into reality. So the reason I put that is, as a captain, it's easy to say, rah, 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 we're going to win state championship, yada, yada, yada. But then your actions are not consistent with that. The captain is the one that truly understands and embraces the process, and understands that the process means that it's a grind from the minute you accept that role of leader to the time that you carry it forward throughout, your career, whether it's high school, college, or professional. And then the trust factor, I mean, there's no substitute for trust. I mean, the ability to earn the trust of your coaches and teammates is paramount. and that is done through your actions. And then we've talked about work ethic before, but I'm going to go back to that quote at the bottom. You're going to be judged by your intentions. Were your intentions pure to the team based on your values? Do you value the right things? Do you value your personal stats, or do you value your team statistics, your winning and losing? And then obviously your beliefs. What is it? Do you believe in hard work, or do you just talk about it? Do you believe in being a person that's honorable, or you just talk about it? And then ultimately that's what shapes you as the character, the person you are. And your ability to be a strong captain or a strong leader ultimately shapes the character of the team. And then when it's all said and done, you got to be willing to accept the challenge, because too many captains are put in a role and they really never accepted it. So if you're given that incredible honor to be a leader and a captain, you have to be willing to accept the challenge, because it is a challenge. And with that challenge comes, the ability to be a person that is looked on by people, respected by people, and obviously a pillar in the community. But you got to be willing to, I call it unleashing all the qualities, because someone sees that you have a tremendous amount of qualities to be a leader, and you got to be willing to unleash those qualities. And that's what's going to create and generate, greatness. So we've got, I think, 3 minutes. What I wanted to do is, hopefully I have a minute for Laura and Jeremy to wrap it up here. But what I wanted to do is just quickly go back to, if you are given the opportunity to be a leader and a captain, you have to be committed and dedicated to your team success, right? Obviously your success is critical, but your team success, now it goes from you to they. And then you got to be able to put yourself secondary to the team. And that's what's going to be very responsible, because that's that whole servant leadership mentality that Coach Reichel talked about. And then when it's all said and done, you have to be the voice of your teammates. So that means that you have to be aware of your teammates' issues, and you got to be sensitive to their needs. And then going back to the, can I be a friend and be respected? This, I would argue, is one of those things that hits that head on, is you got to be compassionate to your friends' issues and needs, but you cannot compromise your values. And that's going to be critical to the person that, and the character that you are. So let me just go to this real quick, because I think it's also important. When you are a captain, guys, a lot of little people, a lot of little siblings, people come watch you and watch you perform on the field and off the field. So it comes with the turf. You got to be a role model to all the little children in the community. And that's not something that you can or that you have the ability to accept or not accept. You have to. That comes with the turf. So as captains, you need to be role models. All eyes are on you. All the little people that come watch you play, your language, your behavior, how you conduct yourselves on and off the field, how you treat your teammates, your coaches, the people in the stands. That's part of the thing that you embrace. So be willing to accept that. And then, your final thoughts here is that I truly believe that each of you are born to be great. And so go for it. Aspire to be great. Be the leader that you were meant to be. And don't be shy about it. Being a leader is a great honor. So with that, Quinn, I was going to see if we had a minute for Laura and Jeremy to kind of give their perspectives on this.
Yes, and before we go to Laura and Jeremy, Ryan made a comment that as a captain, you should be respected by your teammates long after you will be liked. So I thought that was a great point that he made as well.
Thank you, Ryan. And that'll go for many years, by the way, because when you guys are, sitting around with your grandkids, and those that respected you will probably be the ones in your circle. Laura, any final thoughts?
I think, to me, just reflecting back on just all the championship teams that I've been a part of behind the scenes, it's never been the team that has one or two great players. It's always been teams that have had good players with great leadership, because they've been able to take care of business and be on the same vision and on the same track. And they would take care of the things like drinking before a game, and they would have players would just say, I'm not ready to start, coach, put this person in, or this is the rotation I think that works best. This one, I'm not handling I haven't been doing the things that I needed to do, change it up. So I think that's something that I've really learned, is that having the best player on the team isn't going to make you a great team. Having great leaders on a team makes you a great team.
That's deep and powerful. Well said. And that's, when you ask the great coaches, they always tell you the same thing, is that we didn't necessarily have the most talent, but we had the best chemistry, and chemistry comes from leadership. So that's a great point, Laura. Jeremy?
Yeah, Buck, I think, and, really echo everything that you said. There's a couple things that just come to mind. I think number one, captains and leaders also have to know their audience. And, a lot of times we operate off of the golden rule, do to others, treat others the way that you want to be treated. But, something that you hear more and more that I think is valid is treat others the way that they want to be treated. And so you need to understand that a lot of players, and a lot of your teammates, are different people. Different things are going to be important to them. You may have one teammate that wants to be motivated. You may have another teammate that wants a confidant, and you have to be able to, through all the characteristics that you outlined, Buck, be able to cater to each teammate, in a way that affects them and really allows them to look at you as a leader. And then just from my role, covering high school athletics and sports, in terms of media appearances and, speaking to media, and the word media means, both the traditional media, whether it's, newspaper reporters or radio hosts, but also there's a reason the word media is in social media, because everything that you're saying is there publicly. Your audience is your locker room. And, that's not to say that you can't ever be honest. That's not to say that you shouldn't, that you should only speak in cliches. But however you speak and conduct yourself, whether it's on social media, your own platform, or whether you're speaking to, traditional media, you got to remember that, everybody in the locker room, they know what you're saying. They're going to read what you're saying. They're going to see what you're saying. And you want to make sure that you are, not saying anything that is going to make the locker room a worse place or disrupt anybody in the locker room. So, I think for all the student athletes on the call, I'm sure all of you are on social, or most of you are on social media in some form. And many of you have probably spoken to media members or will get the opportunity to speak to media. Just remember, however you answer questions, however you conduct yourself, you're really speaking to the locker room without directly speaking to the locker room.
Now that's powerful. I know in the private world where I worked for many years, energy, we used to have a saying, if especially emails and anything that you were putting on texts, if you don't want it to be on the front page of the local newspaper, don't put it down in writing, because everything you say and do is someone's watching, someone's hearing. So be careful. Quentin, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. I can't thank these young men and women that got up this morning to be on the call. Thank you guys for being on the call, especially those that were able to ask some questions and offer some of their input. I think that's powerful. We would love to do this more often, Quentin, if the opportunity presents itself. There's so many different themes and topics for these young men and women today. So thank you to the Florida High School Athletic Association for your leadership on this. And then ultimately just want to, wish each of you guys tremendous success as we go through this uncertainty in this time right now. So thanks again, Quentin. Appreciate it.
Yes, well, thank you guys so much. I know we're going a little bit over, but if there are any final questions for our panelists, feel free to type them in the chat. I'll leave it open for a minute or so in case you have any questions. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody that participated with us this morning. We designed this seminar to where you could watch live, or you can watch the recording, or you can watch it tonight, tomorrow. It's really designed to best suit you. So thank you. If the live viewing was best suited for you, thank you for being here. When we finalize this presentation, feel free to go over to our Global Learning Training Center to check out some of our electives. We've got electives on officials training. We've got hot topics within the FHS ACE panel. We've got sports and diversity. If you want to learn more about the new Zachary Martin Act, heat illness and prevention, we've got information available for you at the Training Center, as well as what our partners with Special Olympics Florida have been up to keep their group engaged. So I'm not seeing any other questions, but I want to thank Student ACES and their guest for joining us. And if you are joining us live, I will see you at 11 a.m. for the NFHS Network presentation. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.